All right, hello, welcome everybody. Come on in. I know the keynote just finished, so if you're kind of making your way in, we're gonna get started. So, hey everybody, hopefully you enjoyed the keynote. We're live on the internet, so say hello. I'm Andy Blondin from Epic Games. I'm a technical product manager here at Epic. And today I have the great pleasure to share with you some of the advancements that we're doing with the Unreal Motion Design toolset. And so the talk is titled Cutting Edge Tools and Techniques. How many of you have seen our new motion design tools in 5.4? Yeah? Awesome. So I have a great product update for you to kind of showcase some of the work that we've been up to. So what is motion design? It's a suite of tools that we built into the Unreal Engine, so it's not just a one particular tool. It's a whole host and a mode that gives you access to cloners and effectors and animators, but really at the core of it, it focuses on artist-friendly workflows. So a lot of you are producing content for television, for social media, for marketing, and sometimes, going through that process can be difficult. So in our case, we built a little bit of thing through the beta community. Some of our members kicked out some really cool stuff for the 5.4 release. So Harold Hernandez, put up together a nice little shoe commercial for us and some of the things that you'd be able to see, watching kind of network television. And so today we're going to go over some of the, examples that we've seen from the community. And one of the coolest examples I saw that really got me excited was Arthur Baum put together this little short film called Industria that I was kind of blown away with. As a product manager, sometimes your artists make things that you just didn't even know were possible. Well, this was one of those moments for me. And so I want to share this short film with you that he made with one of the features that we call cloners and effectors. And go ahead, it's kind of dark and moody. Enjoy the sound. And we'll kick it off. So yeah, really awesome piece of content there. Congrats to the team that put that together. But showcase some of the powerful tools, like with things like our cloners and effectors. So we have features like cloners and effectors, and this is what it's like as an artist to be able to work in the viewport. So these are tools that we've built that allow you to clone and replicate geometry. We'll be covering these in great detail today. But as an artist, it's super freeing to be able to play with this level of control and rendering in real time. So this is from Wallace David, who put together a really cool, kind of pseudo athletic wear ad where you can reveal on through all these threads and cloners and effectors. So very powerful to be able to do these things in real time, which is something that was always difficult before this to date. So next up, I want to show an example, and this is in our 5.4 era, but from our esports company we work with called Blast, and they're responsible for putting on the esports content and events, and so they built and prevised kind of the walk-ups for the last Rocket League championships. And so this kind of tells the story of being able to design, previs things, do all the motion graphics that you see on the screens, and then play them out during the event. So this is a little example here, just showcasing, what that looks like in Engine. So they built all the different teams. There were 6 different teams with different shapes and designs, text, 3D graphics, and then synchronize that with the DMX lighting. And then when that gets broken down and put onto the LED monitors, it looks a little bit like this. So you have the content there played out on all the different ribbon strips. And so with different shape tools that we have, they were able to, in Material Designer, which we'll be covering in detail, they made all the motion graphics for these 6 different teams in the walk-ups. And then you can see here, this is what it looks like, you know, when they actually go to do the event. So it kind of shows you all the way from design and iteration all the way through to, you know, playing them out live. We're trying to build a graphic system that would allow you to scale to, you know, full output onto big LED screens. So next up, just looking at some more of the beta content. Different team members were putting stuff together, and this was Ali 3D who, you know, we saw a lot of these like really awesome procedural growth type effects coming out of the beta. And so with the cloners and effectors, these were things that the users are putting together here. So, you know, that ribbon type reveal, this was Wallace David kind of revealing a logo on. So we have the ability to take an image and then take that threading and be able to animate those. So as an art director in the past life, you know, these were the kind of things we'd be waiting 2 to 3 minutes per frame to see the results. This is an example from Nick here, Justician. So being able to do the HUD display and being able to do the reveal on effect comes from all of our cloner and effector tools. And then this is a little cartoony type example that you saw, but you can see it can be stylized too, but being able to take those shapes and geometry and to be able to replicate them into different shapes. So you can see here, this is our kind of how it works. If you're unfamiliar with cloners and effectors, as you get different patterns, you can do a grid or honeycomb, cylinder, spheres, and you can clone and replicate the geometry. So whatever you put inside of a cloner, it will start to replicate. And then you have noise patterns and procedural movement with effectors. And so effectors, you can basically, you know, add all these kind of cool motion. So each one of those is, you know, a 10,000 triangle mesh, and you can see it performs super well. So this is very, very liberating to be able to work this way and not have to wait for long renders anymore. But we can also add things like forces and effects. And you'll see in the 5.5 that we've taken this a lot further. So here's an example, you know, just showcasing using this kind of thing with Lumen, how quickly and easily you can build up a scene like this, and with the different lighting, it's just kind of magical to be able to, you know, in your viewport, see things that look path traced fully in real time. So a lot of fun kind of activity there. Next up, so what's new? What do you guys have in 5.5? Well, we were missing a couple things. With the cloners and effectors, we were missing this idea of proximity effects to be able to take, you know, the materials and make things glow, or to be able to add some of those properties. So each of the effectors now has the ability to take the color. In this case, I'm putting it into the emissive, and then you can make those items animate and transition between, you know, different materials. So you can see here, it's just fun to play with. And next up after this, you know, I'll show in the same way. We have some different shapes. Sometimes it's hard to achieve certain shapes, so there's more of a torus and disc style shapes that we have now. Inside that, you can see that we have circular kind of inner and outer fall-offs, but you can take the particle color that I was talking about and be able to target those specific regions. So now you can easily colorize much more of the effects that you could do, where it was difficult in the 5.4 era of things. And then we've added in the ability to kind of scale and transform those, so you can kind of squash and stretch these shapes. So it's very fun to be able to just duplicate and kind of put those all throughout your scene. There's even some like advanced modes here where you have fall-offs of like a 360 and can get different reveal effects that were kind of challenging to do in the 5.4 timeframe, are much easier to do now. Along with that, there's the idea of having like particle color and particle randomness. You can actually get the particle speed and the particle velocity to drive things. But in this case, I'm using a new effector that's called a push-apart effector. And with this, you can get much more of like a force field style effect. So you can see inside the sphere, it's pushing those away. And then outside, I have those particle effects colorizing. So it should be a lot more robust in some of the areas that you can target. One of the big ones that we've added for this release is the particle physics. So now you actually can put physics onto the different cloners and effectors. And you can see here, I'm just going to run through a bunch of different options, but you also get particle collisions between interparticles, but you can also get collisions with different meshes. As I move around the game controller, for example, you can see how those kind of sweep around that side. So it's very fun to be able to, it's kind of addicting to play with these tools. Another part is that you can actually cache these in to the sequencer now. So I'll share at the end of the session, but there's some utilities that are there that allow you to one button click, say you want to cache or add it to the sequencer tracks. So it's very fun to work with. We added in some twist and spiraling effects. So you probably saw this during the keynote here, but the little fake cell phone ad that we have here, but being able to animate the clone count now and animate the effects. I think I'm using a step effector in this case here. So you can kind of see as I hop out, what that looks like. And I'm animating the phones to twirl around. And then there's a twist effect that I'm applying. And with this, I just have a simple plane effector, and I'm being able to move that from left to right. That's changing just the magnitude of the overall effect. So very kind of powerful to be able to add. Obviously, these are very common for different. So same thing, showing the combination of these here, but the twists and the different proximity effects. You can kind of build these up, but obviously trendy for hip modern motion graphics. So the same thing here. Next up, I'll show you here. So this is an example that's closer to like a fake Fast and Furious movie or action trailer. You can see in the back there, I have a cloner and effector, and we have a new twist property that's on the grids and honeycomb. So I'm cloning like 10,000 particles here, and then have the ability to just twist and turn that into some kind of a spiral effect. And then you may notice that we have some new kind of text effects that are happening as well that I'm going to cover in more detail in just a second. So the material designer, that is another core tenet of the system that we're doing. Again, like you can see, we're not necessarily having to go into Blueprint or to make anything custom. We're trying to put as much of this into the UI as possible. So the material designer got quite an overhaul in many areas. So we're going to focus in on this for a bit. But you'll see here that we have a new kind of shader preview. And you have the ability to take what we call a texture set and just drag and drop a set of PBR textures, and it will detect what channels that should belong to based on the naming conventions. And you can, in a sense, kind of one button click, create a new PBR material. So we have channels for each of those. You have base color and emissive. You can toggle all of those on and off as you want, and you'll get a new channel to pop up. And then as you drag in these texture sets, I'm going to swap between a few of them here, but you'll see. So each channel is almost like a little mini Photoshop stack, and you have the ability to change the blend modes. You can add effects onto that, which we'll talk about in the next videos. But like I'll add a brightness and contrast to be able to control like the roughness, for example, here. And all the UVs and tiling is built right in, so you don't have to necessarily build your own custom things anymore. So you can see here I'm just adding a surface imperfection map on top of that and being able to blend those very quickly in real time. We've added a whole bunch of different effects into this, so it's not just brightness and contrast and that kind of thing. We've added things like Fresnel, and the particle glow that I was talking about is available in there. So we're starting to add more and more kind of procedural effects. And all of these effects are actually material functions. So if you're very good with Unreal shaders, with this system, you can build your own effects. And those effects in the project setting, you have a folder that you can point it toward, and it will read into that UI, and it will show up for the user. So you can see here, I'm just dragging and dropping a bunch of different textures in there and kind of showing you that, over the course of a few minutes, I'm able to make a whole host of new materials. You can save those out obviously here, save those as an instance, and then you can drag and drop. The nice part about the UI is as you click on the UI, you can see it's swapping to each material fully live. So you don't necessarily, so I like to dock the UI into different channels and kind of keep it there, but you can see as I run through here a little rip, kind of dragging and dropping all the different materials that I was able to create, in a few minutes. So hopefully this speeds you up on your workflow of just being able to treat it much more in that artist realm. We definitely want some feedback and would like to kind of keep going further. And this is where it gets interesting for you guys as well, is, what if we can take video and push that through that system as well? So in the Material Designer, we now support media textures. So in the case, I'm taking a couple of media textures that I have inside of the sequencer there, and I have 4 different video clips that are playing fully in real time. So these are different kind of stock clips that I have, and being able to play those things, and I'll show you. But you can add white and black mask to be able to wipe between those. So it kind of fully supports, having an alpha channel, and then you can see like changing the text and putting things on top. But there's no, waiting times or no caching or rendering. You can just kind of drag and drop a new asset and be able to play that back. So these are Apple ProRes clips. In some cases, I'm playing 4K clips and some 1080. So it's a mix of how well your system will do based on your own kind of disk speed and requirements, but it's very optimized to be able to be playback, obviously, on a GPU. So in the case here, I have a little trendy title sequence, being able to move that down, reposition. The text effects that you're seeing in there as well is fully done inside Unreal. Little stop motion kind of stylization to it. And then you can move, the title to reposition it so it lands on top of that logo, for example. So I think this is really going to unlock once we start to mix media between having video playback and having some of the 3D graphics that you guys are used to on top of that. So to talk more about those effects, those materials are effects that we just call, they're material functions. Any artist can make these. So we've provided a whole bunch of them, but in this case we have like halftone pattern, for example. And you can see how you can start to get very stylized looking footage out of this. So just playing around with the sliders is very cool. We've added a bunch of the coloring ones, a lot of the distortion ones for panning, scaling UVs, and we have a few blurs that are in there, and we're looking to kind of expand. There are some limitations to it. Blurs are complex, so you have to feed the texture as a reference into the effect itself. But you can see, in this case here, this could be like a music concert visual. So just being able to build up those effects. So in this case, adding, a glow effect on top of this, being able to add, another texture layer. I'll go ahead and copy the media and give it the grungy kind of feel. And then, being able to, boom, play this back fully in real time. And then any of the layers can continue to build up those effects. So as I add like a tint and a glow on top of those, it inherits all those. So you can kind of imagine how you can quickly build up, really cool, complex video sequences with this. So we've added in some nice functions too here that will allow you to glitch and pan the UVs. So one thing that's common and trendy is just to have that, paper-like feel on top of the footage, stuff like that. So in this case, there's one that will take that and randomize the positioning so that you can get different motion. So we definitely want to work with you guys as a community to build up more of these effects and see where we can kind of take it, but it's more of an open-ended system. So in the last sequence here, I think just showing something that's more, again, concert visual style stuff, but the ability to, mirror this footage and kind of play it back. So again, if you didn't necessarily need everything to be, fully driven in real time, this also is going to provide you tons of power. So next up, after that is animators. We have procedural animation and presets. And inside of this, you'll see we have a system called Animators that you can target any specific property. So if you come kind of maybe from the After Effects world, you might have expressions. This will allow you to, in a non kind of coding way, be able to add procedural motion to any property. So in this case, I'm taking the rotation and being able to have like a game controller on a loop spin like this. And you can see we have like it overshooting back and forth. So there's different sine waves and curves that allow you to, get various types of animation. But again, this is the kind of thing you might do in, other software that you'll be waiting in time, obviously, to render those frames. It's super freeing to be able to playfully change these properties fully live. So we even put in some, again, kind of stop motion feel. You can change like the frame rate. So if you needed a lo-fi kind of look to things, you can actually just sample and turn that to say like 8 frames per second there and get like a really cool look. So overall, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what you guys do with these new tools. Those can be added to Sequencer, and you can have the timing for when those trigger. So within Sequencer, there's tracks that allow you to fade. So you can fade in and out on this. So you can kind of see it's paused, and then as it goes in, it will fade in and out. So we're looking further out at more presets and how we can make that even more powerful. So there's less clicks, more artist friendly. And so that gets us into this doesn't just apply to any property, but you can also do text. So text effects we know is super common need inside of any motion graphics. So you can see here we have a new thing that we are calling the curve animator that we want to work with you guys and keep going even further. But what it allows you to do is to take a curve and then apply those properties over. So in this case, I'm taking something that is like a jiggle style effect and allowing those to animate. So you can make a curve asset in Unreal and you can load in any of the curves that you want. So you can get really dynamic kind of jiggle effects and have text scale up and that kind of thing. So in this example, I'm just taking like a bounce down from the top, and you can see here I'm changing the timing of it. So each property, there's a timing offset, and if I adjust that timing offset, I get a very different look to it. So you can also save these as presets. So once you've defined the look and do that, you can save it out as a preset. And then you can stack multiple of these. So you can have an animator, like 2 or 3 animators touching the position property and the scale property, for example, on those. So I think it's going to be a really cool way for you guys to work as motion designers. And obviously, this can apply to not just text. We're trying to take it in some of the prior or next releases to like sub-properties. If you had many objects built up below a null, could we do those same kind of effects of rippling on through many objects, that kind of thing? So, just kind of showing you easy examples, but this kind of stuff comes up all the time, a little end tag, but those cascade style effects with emotion, for example, you can do quite easily. So next up, I want to talk about some of the broadcast workflows. This one's pretty specific to if you're a network broadcaster. So we have something called transition logic, and transition logic is, if you're a broadcaster, you need to take multiple things on the screen at the same time. So if I was giving this presentation, I could have, my nameplate pop up. I could have the live bug come in, I could have the ticker come in. And so you need the ability to have multiple elements come onto the screen at the same time. And that's called transition logic. And in the 5.4 release, we had a version of it. It was pretty complex, if I'm being honest. So we spent a lot of time refocusing on more of the ease of use. So you can see here, just running through those different cycles, you can have multiple graphics on the screen at the same time. You can change the state of those graphics, so you could widen, some of those elements out. You can shift the graphics up when the ticker comes in, for example. And in this case, this shows you a little bit of how it's done, but we have an in and an out, and then each each layer within the scene that we call sublayers has an in and out to it. And if you animate those on the timeline in the directors, when any change happens, it will go ahead and trigger just those elements to come in and out. So this idea of a sublayer, you can go ahead and select, a header. You could select the top line, the footnote, the ticker. And once you assign those, the beautiful thing, I think, is that these are all kept in one scene and it manages the states. So you don't have to separate the scene out into many scenes. You can keep everything kind of built in one common scene, which makes things way easier for testing in this case. But we think it's going to be really, helpful for you guys. Next up, I'm just going to cover some of the masking things. So we're trying to make some masking things easier in Unreal. Transparency and other things have been a challenge inside of a game engine. So, you can mask in multiple ways, but like here's a little example I had with a logo reveal that comes in, but we can use the textures, and then we have something else called a geometry mask. So in this case, believe it or not, this is examples just made of 2 images. It's just a backplate of a warpy kind of element and putting some lens distortion in those effects layers and being able to keyframe those. But you can see the white and black mask that's there. Those can all be animated within the material designer. And you can, take something that was pretty static and make it super dynamic. So just 2 textures and a little particle system can offer you a lot of production value. So next up, these are I do little examples like this to kind of push the tech a bit, but you can see inside the word motion there, you have masking happening. And so, if this was a show kind of logo, I'm using some of the animators and the word motion as a text mask, and you can mask through to other shapes inside of that. Again, kind of another little show open, but you can kind of see inside the word motion as it reveals or masking and cutting through multiple layers of text. And so this shows you a little bit on the outside when you jump out of the scene, what it looks like, obviously, to kind of work in. And so, yeah, it's all fully built inside Unreal Engine as is today. And this one is a little Spideyverse vibe to it, but in the same way, taking our logo and having 4 or 5 copies of that, being able to mask and cut through those layers and reveal the text on. So this is using our geometry mask modifier. And if you're familiar with the After Effects world, you might have a couple white and black masks that you animate. So those are all geometric shapes that are animated through. So different things like this play the game. These type of examples are really good for just kind of stress testing more of those things. So there's a round of quality life enhancements from our beta channel. I know Sean's here and Nick's here, and they provide a lot of good feedback to me as a product manager. So we've made it easy to just go to any actor in the outliner, and you can right-click and create a cloner from that. You can also now create static meshes from those. So if you get a really cool effect going and you need to bake that down and create a static mesh from that. So it's helpful for things like world building where you just want to be able to replicate a whole bunch of shapes and then, unify them and merge them into one single object. It's really good for those type of things. I mentioned being able to utilize the cloners and effectors system. So we have a new material function that you have inside if you right click in a material. But you can see here we can get the effectors and we can get the count, we can get the randomness, the age of the particles. So you can use all of these properties now within the material system. So as an effector, you can feed some of those and use them. So the effects you saw earlier with the proximity effects, I'm kind of using this system to colorize things. In the material designer, you saw those effects that we put. There's a new function in there. It's called particle color. So you can hook it up and start to drive some of these properties. And another one that's small but meaningful is that cloners can now be cached as a Niagara track. So you have the ability to, there's a panel in there called utilities in every cloner at the end. and you can click on the button and that will add in a sequencer track for you with the lifetime of the particle, and you can actually click cache and it will cache those as well. So it's better for deterministic, like scrubbing, being able to render it out of MRQ and MRG. And then a couple other things, I just put them on this slide, but so we are pushing toward being able to use our end display technology with the motion design tool set. So with this release, we have an integration with end display where you can put it into a clustered form. And so if you need a big canvas and you need things to be synchronized fully across those canvases, then you can do that. And then we're also adding support for NDI, so be able to do some more of the network protocols that are here today. So yeah, that's kind of it. I ran through it rather quick because obviously the keynote was running long, but it'll give us a little more time for questions, and I'll be around obviously to cover anything that you guys need after this.